What's going on, guys? My name is Wade with TechDaily. So let's talk about the Samsung Galaxy A53 5G. Now, over the last 2 years, Samsung's A50-something devices were probably the best phones to buy in the lineup, especially last year with the A52 and A52s. Incredible value for the money, great specs, widely available. But with the A53 this time around, I just think that this poor phone kind of got squeezed out of the A-series lineup this year when you consider what you get with the A33 5G and A73 5G. And on top of that, I'm also having a hard time picking out significant specific changes or upgrades from last year's A52s that would entice people to replace those phones for this one. Now, those two opinions exist separately from the device itself. It's a solid phone, plenty of features that would make anyone happy. There's no issues with it, and the core elements that make it an incredible value, namely its bold, bright AMOLED screen, better than average internal specs, and very capable camera setup are all still there. So I'm going to break down all my thoughts on this A53 in this video, and like always, if you have your own opinion on this device or anything else I say, let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to hear what you have to say from your own experience, good, bad, or otherwise. Now, physically, the A53 5G is once again a good-sized 6.5-inch smartphone. Its screen size really hasn't changed over the last 3 years at least, so you always know what you're getting. And it does fall in between this year's 6.4-inch A33 and the 6.7-inch A73, but we're talking fractions of an inch difference on either end. None of these three phones have any advantage or disadvantage either way when it comes to their screen sizes, so frankly I don't even consider that to be a factor. The center hole punch selfie camera, slim side bezels, and relatively small bottom chin have also been a part of the design on this phone year over year, and that's totally fine with me. There's more or less an 85% screen to body ratio and relatively distraction-free viewing experience. Around back, these A-series phones all seem to look the same this year, which I'm fine with. The soft touch matte plastic shell paired with the metal-like polished sides give off a semi-premium vibe, but it's a mid-tier A-series phone, and the build is what we've come to expect. The only other change besides a smoother, more subtle camera bump is the addition of an IP67 water and dust rating, a first for the A-series, and that's a minor, albeit very welcome add-on for its durability. Now, I haven't exactly put this phone through any stress tests personally, but I've been living with it case-free this whole time, and the plastic is still perfect. The shine's still shiny, and all the sides, corners, and edges don't appear to be showing any signs of wear. One thing that I know some people were bummed about on the A53 was Samsung's decision to remove the headphone jack, and I can understand that. It's not like they took it away to make room for bigger, better speakers or anything like that. It more looks like they just filled in the space with nothing. And I think ditching the headphone jack now also indirectly justified the slim packaging and lack of any other accessories included. No earbuds, no dongle, no case, no nothing. And it's very frustrating to see these phone companies taking so much stuff away. Something that is still here though is the SD card slot, so that's a relief. You can configure this phone a million different ways, with 128 or 256 gigs of built-in storage and 4, 6, or 8 gigs of RAM. But considering all the stuff people save on their phones nowadays, having the option to have more storage is never a bad thing. And the A53 also has an in-display fingerprint sensor, which for me has worked well, better than previous A-series in-display sensors for sure, but obviously not quite ultrasonic speedy. Either way, in the weeks that I've had this phone, I very rarely have had to adjust or retry my fingerprint. Speaking of the display, this is once again a top reason to consider this phone, and it's actually the one singular feature that decisively separates the A53 from the lesser A33. So what we get here is Samsung's Super AMOLED screen, coming in a full HD resolution of 2400 by 1080 for about 405 pixels per inch, and on top of all that, it is a 120Hz high refresh rate display. The A33 is a 90Hz panel, so that's the difference there, but interestingly enough, this is the same spec display as the higher A73, so keep that in mind. Comparisons aside though, the A53 delivers that bold, bright, and very colorful look that I know a lot of people appreciate. I certainly do. And while this particular OLED panel maybe doesn't get as dark with its blacks or as bright for outdoor viewing as some other devices nowadays, I still think it offers a lot of value. Resolution-wise, you have to go 1080p with a screen this size, so no issues there with clarity. And with 120Hz enabled, this phone absolutely feels super responsive and silky smooth with every tap and touch. Altogether, these are the same general features and specs that Samsung's S-series phones get. There may be minor differences in the quality of the OLED panel or the touch sampling rate, but but for a vast majority of people, this is a viewing experience that is very much comparable to those $750 and up devices. It's been the top reason to consider these mid-tier A-series phones in years past, and once again, for 2022 on this A53 5G, the viewing experience, the display is all pretty great. Also, Samsung brought a dual speaker setup to the A53 this year, which enhances the out loud listening experience too. This is a very minor but much appreciated addition, and given how often I personally utilize the speaker setup day in and day out, it's a change I get a lot out of. They may not be any special speakers with their sound quality or placement, but they're loud enough, and here's a quick sound sample so you can get an idea. So when it comes to the internal specs and performance, this I think is where the A53 5G falls a little flat this year. And it's not because of any issues. The phone performs just fine. It really stems from the choice of processor and how it compares to other similarly priced devices. Inside, this phone is powered by the Exynos 1280, one of Samsung's newest mid-tier chipsets, but comparatively, the A33 5G also got Samsung's Exynos 1280 and the same RAM options. Therein lies the problem. Now, I did a speed test comparison video between the A33, A53, and A73, which has a higher tier processor than both of them. And while the A33's internals seem to be either configured slightly different or maybe less utilized in some way, based on what we saw on the Geekbench scores at least, the end result was still similar speed and performances between two phones that really shouldn't be similar. Furthermore, while the A53 has no outright performance issues, this choice of processor limits you if your intentions are to play, say, really graphics-heavy games at their highest settings. This phone just doesn't support that. You'll get maxed out 40 to 60 FPS settings with noticeable frame drops from time to time, while the A73 can support and play smoothly on even higher settings. Now, is that a deciding factor for most people? Likely not, but it is for some folks, and it really highlights the reason why I think the A53 just has a tougher time fitting in the lineup. It's not really any better than the A33, even though it's priced higher, and it's also not a huge upgrade over the A52 or A52s either, which both have Snapdragon 700 series processors. Like I said though, this phone performs well day in and day out, and for a vast majority of people whose daily usage consists mostly of web browsing, social media scrolling, YouTube video watching, and texting, you're gonna have that well-optimized and familiar Samsung One UI setup and multiple years of software updates to come. The A53 is a fairly well-specced, well-performing device with plenty of capability to handle everything you throw at it, but it isn't the only phone on the market. It's certainly not the only phone in its price range, and it's not even the only A-series device that Samsung offers with these specs. And spec and price comparisons are going to be made, and unfortunately with the A53, I'm not sure it's different enough to hold up. You can save some money and grab the A33 here and barely notice a difference. On the flip side, if you are a gamer or particularly picky about performance, the A73 gives you decisively more, even for a little higher price. When it comes to battery life and longevity, I mentioned this in my A73 review, but there's really one positive and one negative. The size of the battery inside this phone, 4500 milliamps, is the positive, and I can easily get 12 hours of screen on time at least with my usage without having to disable 120 Hz or perform any other funky battery saving tricks. But there's no other charging or power related features still. No wireless charging, which I don't understand, no industry leading fast charging, just the same 25 watt support, which you won't even be able to utilize unless you supply your own 25 watt brick, since Samsung doesn't include one in the box. Altogether, Samsung just doesn't really seem to be interested in offering anything more on their A-series phones right now when it comes to charging. As far as the camera setup, it's no secret that Samsung has been focusing their efforts here more than anywhere else on their smartphones nowadays, and the improvements year over year, at least with the actual pictures and videos, continues to impress me. With the actual specs, capabilities, and features, we don't really see any significant changes. The hardware is the same as the A52s. We once again get a 64 megapixel main lens, 12 megapixel ultra wide, and a pair of 5 megapixel macro and depth lenses. The selfie shooter is also the same, a 32 megapixel lens, and inside the camera app, there's nothing really that's been added or otherwise changed, but Samsung still offers a lot of features and functions that allow this phone to be a step above the competition, like 4K video, for example, pretty decent pro controls for photos and video, extra stabilization, high megapixel shooting. There's more here than I personally use day to day, and I think over the years, Samsung has slowly evolved their A series camera setups from being fairly budget focused to surprisingly feature packed. With all that being said though, you are still going to be able to tell that this A series phone falls short of Samsung's flagship devices, mainly with how consistently inconsistent it is when conditions are less than ideal. The A53, like most other Samsung phones, gives you a very colorful and saturated look, which is very pleasing, but not necessarily true to life. There's tons of detail in every shot, which is great. That's something that's particularly important. But when settings or subjects show some extremes, dark shadows, bright areas, the phone tends to struggle. The dynamic range isn't as great as it likely could be, which is what gives away the fact that it's a budget device. Still, 90% of the pictures I took with this phone, I was very impressed by, and with the videos too, for that matter. I personally haven't always been impressed by Samsung's mid-tier and budget phones when it comes to video, but again, there's been a lot of improvement here, especially with stabilization, focus hunting, and just the overall look of the shots. All in all, this is a phone that absolutely gives you a lot to work with when it comes to the camera setup, and I don't know that most people who have an S series phone use all the super crazy high-end features that Samsung offers there. With the A53, the camera setup I think is one of the top reasons to consider this phone. There's plenty to work with without being over the top, and for a vast majority of people, these pictures and videos will be very impressive. So let me sum up my thoughts on the A53 5G by saying, objectively, there is nothing wrong with this phone. It's a feature-packed device that's a great value for your money, as has been the case with the past couple A50-something devices. Between the decent design, AMOLED 120Hz display, better than average camera setup, and familiar Samsung Android experience with multiple years of software updates, this phone offers more than enough to make anyone happy, and it's a decent investment while being a decent value. But the A53 doesn't exist by itself in the world of smartphones, or even within Samsung's own 2022 lineup. If you have an A52 or A52s from last year, there's nothing this A53 offers that you're missing, so I can't really see upgrading. If you have some other different or older device and you're looking at the 2022 A series phones, I personally would recommend just getting the A33 if you want to save some money without sacrificing any significant features or specs. On the other hand, if you want your dollar to go further and you can spend a little more, the A73 is that more significant step up that makes the extra cash worth it. The A53 to me just kind of got squeezed out this year when you really start to compare, and that's unfortunate. But at the end of the day, if you like it, if you want it, if it's the phone being offered by your carrier for a good deal, you should still get the A53. It's once again a fantastic buy. I just hope next year Samsung does a little more to both upgrade it and differentiate it from the rest of the crowded lineup. So those are my thoughts on the A53 5G. What do you guys think? Is there something I'm maybe missing? Let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts, of course. But hopefully you guys did enjoy this video. Be sure to follow TechDaily on Twitter and subscribe to the TechDaily YouTube channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys later.